Any questions? Yep, one over here.
Hi, I've got a really quick one. My name's Catherine, and I've got a really quick one. In terms of Google, Sebastian, and rewarding good content, obviously Panda and Hummingbird have made changes to that. So do you think there'll be a rise in more native advertising in the years to come?
Yes, native is one of the things that I haven't touched on. That's of course a massive thing, especially in the brand space. And that's also something that we as Google are working incredibly hard on and making that happen. You've seen recently an announcement around a native ad exchange, not from us, so I'm not going to tell you who did it. No, I can tell you. But Google, we're working very hard on something similar, because ultimately we know that native ads create a much better experience for user, therefore create much more value for publisher, and then ultimately have much higher engagement for the advertiser that is running those ads. So yes, absolutely, as one of the big trends going forward, also as part of the whole pie of programmatic and programmatic solutions.
Sure, and I guess the other question I had is that some of us would look at ways to put advertising spend behind maybe hidden posts or trending hashtags. So do you think there may be a bit of cynicism once consumers get used to that, and it might make diluted native? That's
Too many hashtags.
Sebastian, sorry.
Too many hashtags here. I saw an ad the other day, I think it was Uncle Toby's or something, I don't know what it was a cereal, and it was just full of hashtags. It was really funny. Yeah, hashtags are a waste of time unless they're used properly, which is if there's a genuine conversation which you are prepared to embrace, but we overuse them horribly. I mean, they're just hashtag crazy.
On the native, is this thing on? No. Can I steal yours? On the native advertising thing, and sort of, I guess, burnout from that, there has been a few good studies. There's not a lot of good studies. There's a lot of really bad studies about how effective they are and how well people are reacting to them. There have been a few good studies that do actually support the fact that people don't care if something is native content, if it's a sponsored post. All that matters is whether it's good. New York Times did some good stuff around that, and BuzzFeed's done some pretty good research around it as well. So at the moment, it seems to work. I can't actually guarantee that that'll continue forever, because we may get some sort of burnout.
In the back row, sorry. My name's Alex. I've got a question for Konrad. I came in at the end, so I heard your talk, but I'm not sure if it was discussed earlier. But how do you propose that businesses scale scale their businesses if it's to go back to sort of individualism in terms of understanding individual consumers? Surely that a lot of businesses need to function on scale and pick up simple messages very quickly about what people are doing and then market it. But where do you go with your hypothesis?
I think if I understand the question correctly, you're sort of saying if we're looking at people's behaviour first and designing experiences for them, how do you scale that? Is that kind of what you're asking? Yeah. I mean, you can see success in that in all businesses really. So you can see traditional businesses that are having trouble designing around those experiences that are actually going to make people's lives useful. And that's why you've got businesses that are in the startup world that have created that from the ground up and have created billion-dollar businesses overnight. That's taken other businesses, like decades and decades and decades to build. So I think that mentality of not being able to scale something like that, I think that's a bit wrong. Like I think if you can find that secret recipe or that great experience rather than that great piece of communication, you can scale it and you can provide something that's actually going to create lots of revenue for you and be a successful business. Did you hear my joke, at least?
I mean, it's always our gag, isn't it? But like, if as many people went to see the Sex Pistols live in 1976 as claim to have seen them, that they would have sold out Wembley Stadium 100 times over. I mean, as long as you can take experiences and scale them. I mean, there was that brilliant Coke James Bond, activation, I think, where they kind of got the vending machine. I don't know if anyone ever saw it. It was at one of the stations in the UK, and as you were ordering a Coke Zero, it gave you 40 seconds to run from the vending machine to a particular platform. And on the way, lots of obstacles are put in your place. Probably only 10 people actually did that, but the thing is, something like 40 million people saw it on YouTube, so you can scale experiences that way. Look at the gay TM. I mean, there are only 10 of them, but everybody read about it.
There was another question here.
I think everyone has mentioned the fact that the future of advertising should be around the user and related content and behavioral experience. And I think it was Kimberlee, she mentioned that people don't change. And because advertising agencies or companies are made of people, I feel concerned the fact that with all this technology, with all these possibilities, we are still bombarded by non-relevant ads, like the one with the iPad. I can't remember who showed that ad from Telstra. And so we have things like remarketing, we have things like a location-based advertising, and somehow we still have thousands of ads every day that are not relevant to us, which pisses people off, So my question is this going to change at some stage? Because it's true, people don't change, and these agencies probably will not change. It is some kind of a silly trend coming from the 60s, like Dominic mentioned, that dude that was basically promoting that idea. So we are here like 50, 60 years later, and we're still using the same technique? Or do you think that at some stage someone will realize that that's not the future? Because the thing that really bothers me off is these people are really raising the price of advertising. Like you are trying to implement all these other nice techniques, but because some dude decide to spend a lot of money in mass advertising on not relevant content, at the end of the day we are all paying for that. So is this going to change at some stage, or you think we better?
It's on. I think the reason we get shit advertising is because we have shit insights. And so that comes back to understanding, again, who it is that we're actually trying to talk to. And it has to go beyond the surface of one focus group here and there. So I think, as it will evolve, the quality of our advertising product in terms of the creativity that goes into the spaces and places that we can fill through different digital channels. There's some great advertising, but the majority of it isn't so great. And that is because we are in an economy where we need to churn things out very quickly. So if I look at, the briefs that come through the agency, and, if there's client side in the room in here, just think about what your day-to-day processes look like. There's a good chance you're on the phone to someone like me. You want something turned around in 24 hours. Your description of your target audience is like Konrad was saying earlier, which is 18 to 35-year-old men who spend time gaming and in between that are at the pub. There's not a whole lot in that allows us to really drill in to understand who these individuals are, how they're behaving, and therefore what the linkage is between the product that we're trying to advertise and how that product fits into the world of this particular individual. So that's where context becomes really important. And, we've certainly seen great results when we get into more contextual targeting and contextually relevant advertising, and it's the intersection between what the product is trying to sell and what the user is needing, that's where we'll get great advertising out. But I completely agree. I mean, the number of executions that we come across, and sometimes that we author ourselves, you can get pretty disappointed. You can have a bad day, for sure.
Is it some of it cultural? Because I've not been here very long, but I've noticed a lot of advertising is very direct in Australia, and the people are quite direct as well, in a way that in business, I think it's quite a fact, isn't it? That Aussies are plain speaking, to the point, blunt, and I think you get quite a lot of plain speaking, blunt advertising. There's certain advertising here which is celebrated at the moment, which is very retail driven and very price driven, and it sort of doesn't surprise me because I think that historically maybe has been quite a cultural truism, but I think as a younger generation here who I see when I'm out and about, and they're very different, you know, the ones who are trying to use Netflix and downloading Hola so they can watch Netflix illegally and downloading Game of Thrones, and they're a lot more travel, they're a lot more liberal, and they don't look like the government, they don't look like Tony Abbott, and I think that's probably that generation when they come through, they're not squabbling outside their £1 billion penthouse in Sydney and having a fight on the ground. And I just maybe wonder culturally whether, as the old Australia moves on, which is that blunt talking, all right, call women a Sheila and all that sort of stuff, and the world of brands still called things like No Birds. I can't believe that there's a brand, a rental business in Sydney called No Birds, but it's all going to move on, and you'll get good, interesting brands coming through. I'm absolutely convinced of it for the younger generation.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I think there's also, there's the stakeholder, there's the layers, the ridiculous number of layers of stakeholder management that happens in organisations where, as a result, there's a joke obviously in the industry that what we start with versus what gets published are poles apart. And, that's everyone wanting to kind of add their taste onto an execution. And so having more of an appetite for risk, being prepared to back your own judgment and push that all the way up through your own organisation is also critical to ensuring that the work that comes out is what you believe is right for your consumer. Because we spend too much time advertising to ourselves. Like, we advertise to the CEO or to the most senior decision maker in any organisation. Fact.
I think beyond the fact that almost 50% of advertising is actually below average, sort of a part of your question was around this, we're going to this world where everything's targeted and Google know everything about us, and so therefore we should be seeing this sort of pinnacle of beautiful advertising through epic targeting. And I'm sort of always reminded of, go back and look at discussion around computing in sort of the 40s and 50s, and there's this commonly held belief in that period that once we'd sort of nailed computing, man would spend 3 hours a week working and the rest of the time would be leisure. And advertising is a little bit like that now with the promises that are being made. So I think it's very dangerous to align your thinking and your business around this future where advertising will be horrendously optimised and effective, and so therefore we will see very few ads and they will all be relevant to us, because that's not the future. That you will never stop seeing betting ads.
Yeah.
Like, ever.
But it's good having crap stuff out there, though, because if you didn't have crap in life, there'd be nothing to kick back against. Yeah. I mean, it's like music, isn't it? I mean, I'm a huge music fan, and I love Australian music. If you listen to FBI, Jesus, Australian music is absolutely cutting edge, like Australian cinema. But if you were to listen to your mainstream radio stations, you just hear a whole load of shit. But actually that shit is what's making that music scene really great. And I think it's the same with advertising. Every time I look at TV and I just see all this shit, retail competition to what we do Aldi, and I look at what the competitor supermarket stuff is doing, I think it just spurs us on to do better.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks very much, guys. But on that note, we'll wrap up for the day. And as the panel have been talking about, there is a lot of pretty rubbish advertising out in the world and in Australia. There's a lot of really great examples.
No one tweet that. I have to go back to
Whybin. That's off the record. There's also a lot of fantastic clients that Kimberlee has that she loves very much. There's a lot of wonderful advertising in the world, and we've seen some good examples today, and hopefully we can all take some inspiration for doing more of the latter and less of the former. So please join me in thanking our panel again.